The Democrats have been pushing this narrative for a long time now that the political right is much more violent than the political left. But of course, we all know this is a bunch of garbage, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. But the first thing I want to focus on is the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on political violence, where we're going to see Michael Knowles tear apart Cory Booker with his own words. So before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
We are in a crisis right now, and there is growing political violence and a growing justification for it. But I find it stunning that the way we talk about it seems more about grievance politics and trying to score points than actually getting to the root of what is an American problem. And it frustrates me when that is so transparent and clear, especially when we don't talk about people on our own side of the aisle. But we have an administration right now who is eviscerating the people that should be keeping us safe, and who is pulling down from the website, as they did earlier this year when the Department of Justice removed from its website a government-funded report published last year that found that the number of far-right attacks continues to outpace all other types of terrorism and domestic violence extremism. If we can't accurately describe a problem and do it without partisan rhetoric or seeking to score partisan points, we will not solve this problem. The only thing that's going to get us out of this condition is for courageous leaders in both parties to start standing up and extending grace and self-introspection.
Now, I want to return to the topic of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And one of the things that was quite disturbing to me was quotes that came from activist professors. An assistant dean at MTSU posted on Facebook, "Looks like old Charlie spoke his fate into existence. Hate begets hate, zero sympathy." There was an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee. "The world is better off without him in it, even those who are claiming to be sad for his wife and kids. His kids are better off living in a world without a disgusting psychopath like him and his wife." And then an English professor at Cumberland University posted on Facebook, "Crying about a Nazi getting shot while staying silent about the school shooting in Colorado today is peak Republican."
I think you make a marvelous point, Senator. You cannot possibly expect a parent to send their children to a school where the professors might endeavor to kill half the students. It would be like going to a restaurant with the assumption that the waiters want to poison half the customers or something like that. You can't go to a hospital where the nurses want to kill half the patients. It's just, you cannot operate a society that way. That is obviously beyond the pale. And if you are to permit that kind of speech into the marketplace of ideas, it doesn't have the effect of expanding the marketplace of ideas. It actually shrinks the marketplace of ideas. This is why the First Amendment obviously prohibits things like direct threats or obscenity or fighting words, because these are forms of speech that actually undermine rational discourse. I think Senator Booker made a good point just a moment ago when he said we have to self-examine, we have to be introspective. And, I can't help but think of a line today. Jay Jones has the vision, commitment, and integrity to keep families safe and make sure every Virginian gets a fair shake in the justice system. I'll be working every day to ensure Jay wins this race. That's the endorsement of Senator Booker for a man who would seek to be the Attorney General of Virginia. This is a man who, if people have not been reading the news, has called for a Republican to be murdered, for his children to be murdered, for the children to die in their mother's arms in order to persuade the Republican to change his policy views, and a man who says that he would urinate on the graves of multiple Republicans. Senator Booker, in this spirit of introspection, is standing by this endorsement. So I suppose I would invite, perhaps I should have looked, because Senator Booker has left the room, and I think I can guess why. Senator Booker, I think, should practice what he preaches, because this is the kind of moment. You cannot have a professor who wants to teach students and is going to going to desire to kill half of them. You certainly cannot have law enforcement officers who would engage in this kind of violent rhetoric against half of their constituents. So long as anyone stands by an endorsement such as that, their words are meaningless. They are shedding crocodile tears on the topic of political violence.
I find it just so astounding that we have professors that continue to be in classrooms and hold such views as I put on the posters behind me, and that parents are then having to address those issues with their kids.
So I find the irony here absolutely delicious, because you have Cory Booker out there saying, you know what, we have to tone down the rhetoric in this country. We have an American problem with violence. And if we want to fix this problem, we have to be willing to call out our own side. Okay. But then you have Michael Knowles coming out and reading the exact endorsement for Jay Jones, right? A man who has said some of the most disgusting, divisive, and violent things about his Republican opponents. Okay, but is that going to stop Cory Booker from endorsing him? Absolutely not, because it's blue no matter who. Rather than saying, hey, you know what, you better drop out of this race so we can replace you with somebody else in the last couple of weeks or months before this election. No, instead, full-throated endorsement, right? So what happened, Cory Booker? What happened to those principles you were just talking about? What happened to calling out your own side? Oh, you're not going to do that. Instead, you're going to keep repeating the old lie that the right is more politically violent than the left. Never mind the fact that all of the studies that he, of course, is quoting have flawed data, or rather, I should say, absent data, because guess what's not included as political violence from the left in those data sets? Oh, it's all of the BLM riots that happened a couple of years ago. Oh, it's all of the Antifa activity that happened a couple of years ago and is still happening. Oh, it's the Covenant School shooting. That didn't count as left-wing political violence. Not to mention all of the attacks on ICE facilities and ICE officers by radical leftists, right? None of that counts as political violence. And of course, also the physical assaults on right-wing reporters and commentators. All of that stuff has been happening, but it hasn't been counted as political violence. So you have to look around and say, really? The left is less violent than the right? I don't think so. But of course, all of these Democrats are probably brainwashed or willingly fooled by fake reporting, or rather by lack of reporting from the bubble media that they are stuck in. And of course, for more recent examples, you have no further to look than Charlie Kirk's murder. All right. What happened in the aftermath of that? At every single vigil across the nation, the left wing gathered to harass, to make fun of, to belittle, and of course, to make all kinds of disgusting comments about Charlie Kirk. So what could have been a moment to come together and say, yeah, we should tone this stuff down. Instead, the left went right back to marching in goose step down the streets and blaming the right for all of their left-wing violent problems. So it was great seeing Michael Knowles call all of that garbage out on the Senate floor. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me.